The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, it's been 8 years since this costly Prime Minister took office, but it was 2 years ago that he signed a deal with the NDP leader where in the latter promised that it would bring more affordable food. Since that time, the NDP and Liberals have helped raise food prices by 20%. Their favourite inflationary instrument is the carbon tax. Now they plan to quadruple the carbon tax on the farmer who produces the food and the trucker who ships the food, and therefore all who buy the food. The Canada's food professor is calling for a cap on the carbon tax. Will the Prime Minister cancel his 23% carbon tax hike for April 1st?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, once again, we heard in Parliamentary Committee yesterday absolutely no evidence, no data to support the Leader of the Opposition's contention that the price on pollution impacts on grocery prices. The reality is, Mr. Speaker, our price on pollution returns 4 times a year more money to 80% of Canadians in the areas where it is in play than it costs them. That's how we can both fight against climate change and put more money in the pockets of Canadians. The Leader of the Opposition is proposing to take away those 4 times a year rebate checks from Canadians.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the NDP also promised affordable housing when they sold out their constituents and signed on to a coalition with the Leader of the Liberals. But since that time, the rent is up well over 20% as they fund more bureaucracy to block homes and deficits that drive up interest rates, so much so that Tim Chen, a student in Vancouver, actually needs to commute to university from Calgary. Yes, he has to fly back to Calgary where he can afford the rent under a Conservative government, and then fly over to Vancouver in a commute in order to study. Mr. Speaker, how crazy is it that you have to commute across?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition likes to talk about the challenges Canadians are facing, and while we're busy solving them, he's proposing nonsensical solutions. Let's talk about the Conservative leader's housing plan. It won't build homes fast enough, it doesn't reach enough cities, and it creates unnecessary bureaucracy. He'll also rip up our housing accelerator agreements, which are unlocking 500,000 new homes, and he'd put the GST back on apartment construction. Housing experts like Mike Moffat say his plan is exceptional weak and a sign that, quote, the Conservatives don't understand the scale of the housing crisis. We'll take no less.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the results speak for themselves. When I was the housing minister, rent was $950. It's now over $2,000. When I was the housing minister, the average mortgage payment on a newly purchased home was $1,400. It's now over $3,500. And my common sense plan would require cities permit 15% more home building as a condition of getting federal money, require they build housing around transit stations rather than having empty fields there, and sell off 6,000 federal buildings and thousands of acres of federal land to build. Why won't he build homes instead of building bureaucracy?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
The reality is Canadians just can't trust Conservatives and their attacks and their talking points. Why? Because an active, paid lobbyist is the one giving them all their advice on how to win their campaign. The reality is, Mr. Speaker, the big business and money behind the Conservative Party is once again driving their agenda as they propose cuts to vulnerable Canadians, underinvestments in housing, and no solutions to the very real challenges Canadians are facing. They're in the pocket of big business, as evidenced by Jenny Byrne's work for Loblaw.